Hey guys, what's happening? I'll turn this down just a little bit. There we go. Alright, now we got the sweet docile tones and DOS tapes going. What's happening, everybody? Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to the Singularity Lab, your home for credible, reliable commentary and news and breaking stories in science, technology, futurism, and UAP discoveries. I am your co-host, Luis Jimenez. Michael Mataluni and Kristen Mataluni are backstage getting ready. Our guest is here, Mr. Christopher Plain from the Debrief, lead science writer. The man is not only hilarious and maybe wearing the greatest shirt that has ever been seen on this channel. It's pretty damn good. Very, very excited. Let's see what's going on here. StreamYard has lost access to your Facebook. Oh man, Michael Mataluni, do you see that warning? Okay. Interesting. All right, well, we're still good. Let's see who's in the chat. Ethereal Aura. This piece by Christopher Mellon just dropped. It's a must-read. I agree, as you can see here. Shots fired? Possibly. I think so. Redbeard escapes in some. If there is a better hypothesis than alien technology for the Nimitz case, what is it? It's a damn good question by Christopher Mellon that he put out there in today's response. Ooh, look who we got here, Mr. G. West. Hello? Case for infinity? Is a bear crap in the woods? Is a frog's arse watertight? Yes, of course, the government is lying about UAP, but what about which part? Agreed. Rather Be Squidding is in the house. Congratulations, Michael. The show's officially on. Rather's here. I can understand Mellon's frustration, but the report is making a difference. The TMZ and Discovery specials didn't hold back on the ET hypothesis. As always, Rather makes a damn good point. Gelrick, hello. Welcome, Simon. Welcome from the UK. It's pretty late over there, so thank you for joining us. David Pomar. Hey, I'm from Florida. So am I. What part? Share. Let's see here. I don't know Roman numerals that well, but hello. Welcome to the Singularity Lab. Oh, hi. Oh, hi back to you. We got JD Briscoe in the house. I just saw him over at the Martin Willis podcast, so welcome. We got Rusty Pack, Rodrigo. How you guys doing today? Tyler Cahill, welcome. All right, room's filling up. It's almost time to start the show. One of my favorite jams here. Yeah, it's on, you guys. We're gonna be having a really fun conversation today. Not only do we have Mr. Chris Plain, but we also have, coming back to the show, do we have Nick P? Is that right? Am I reading that right? Nope, totally. I'm on the wrong one. I don't know what happened. Oh, Vic Richie is definitely here though, right? Yeah, Vic Richie's here tonight. He's in the house. He's going to be talking about the going out event. Night Out. I'm forgetting the name of it. But I know it's a nationwide event where everybody's invited to go out and do some sky watching and bring some tools to measure stuff, and we're gonna have a discussion. It's gonna be fun. I know he's coming on my show in a couple weeks, so let's do this, you guys. Let's bring on our hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Mataluni. Hi guys, how you doing?
No.
Right?
Get that music kicking.
It's on, baby.
I am stoked. We've got a pretty amazing cat for you all today. I know the Twitterverse has been a bit of buzz because this gentleman is somebody who's pretty deep in this conversation that most of y'all have been following. So pretty stoked to have him. How about you? How about you guys?
Kristen?
I'm sorry, I was reading comments.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'm stoked. I've had, I think, a very brief conversation face to face with Chris, but for the most part, it's been through email. So he's he's cool. He's a cool dude as far as I'm concerned. I can't wait
Yeah,
to
we
talk
talked
to him.
with him another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had him on our old podcast, Cocktails and Calamity.
You know what? I
way
think
back.
that's where I think I talked to him.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because I was commenting. But I don't know if I've actually had, well, other than the pre-show.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway.
you're going to get to know a pretty funny cat.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Let's do it, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
For those of you who don't know, we've got the Chris Plain joining us tonight. Chris is a stand-up comedian, former sketch comedy writer, and the author of 3 fantasy novels. He's also the head science writer at The Debrief. His first science novel, Titan, is due out early next year. Welcome, Chris Plain.
Mataluni, Kristen Mataluni, and Luis, whatever your last name is. There they are.
Dude, amazing
Luis,
to have you.
Not Elizondo.
Not Elizondo, exactly. Exactly. That's perfect.
Stay on that. Go back to the big shot real quick there.
Okay, we're going back to the big shot.
Yeah, there you go.
Wife, mother, nieces, sister, they'll all be watching this later. What was with your hair? So, get that right. Luis, you and I spoke on a chat with Eclectic Method.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. We
Face
did.
to
We did.
face.
That's right.
Locked
We did.
eyes like two wild animals.
Yeah,
on
like
separate hills.
like 2 rhinoceros
right.
fighting for territory. Yeah.
It's you and me. Jimenez.
Yeah.
Yes.
The death looks, as they call them.
Hey, before we get too far, you guys mind if I tease something a little bit?
Oh, yeah, what do you got?
Right,
Talk to us.
right.
Talk to us.
I've been talking to Mike about this for a while off the air, and he often tells me, Chris, you're over at the Debrief. Get me some goods. Get me something that nobody else has. And that's what I've worked on. And I can tell you right now, Mike, the secret guest is lined up for Thursday. It's a lot of back and forth, a lot of negotiation. Here's what I can tell you. They will give their name, but their face will not be on screen. But you do have, I got a big guest for you on Thursday. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but it's locked in.
That's really exciting. So for those of you who are new to the Singularity Lab, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you get notified the second we go live on Thursday, because we're going to have that special guest. I'm stoked to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Something I've been working on for a while, something I promised you a while back, and it's finally come to reality. So
that's amazing. I can't wait. So let's dig in here right now, because I'm really curious, Chris. You just had several huge stories break on the Debrief. You mind giving us a quick background? We're going to get into, for those of you just joining us again, we're going to get into a lot of stuff today. We're going to be talking about the threat narrative coming from the U.S. government when it comes to UAPs, and we're also going to be digging into NASA. We're going to be digging into a lot of the stories that Chris has been writing about UAPs, as well as his other stories that he's been breaking. You had Mark Sokol on. You did a story about him recently that just dropped. He's the gentleman who is working on anti-gravity and a warp drive detector, who we're actually going to have here on Thursday as well, in addition to Chris's special guest. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about that story, or what you've been working on over at the Debrief.
Well, I can tell you, first of all, about Mark. The guy's fantastic, okay? He has a company called Falcon Space out in New Jersey, and he's taken a hands-on approach. He's a guy who a decade ago had bought himself a Toyota Prius, and he had to swap out the battery pack, and the tools didn't exist, so he built them himself. So that's the type of guy we're talking about, and he's owned and run a company swapping out battery packs for a decade now. He got into some, in the anti-gravity community, they're kind of collateral to the UFO community because of the possible propulsion mechanisms seen by some of these UFOs. And the people within that community range from people with high theory, physicists, mathematicians, and I talk to people like that all the time. I've written about warp drive theorists and so forth. But Mark is on the whole other end of the scale. He's a hands-on practical engineer. He looks at theory and says, how can I test that? What can we do in the lab to give it a test? So that feature is about 3 times the length of a typical feature I do over there at the Debrief, because there was a lot to get into. There's a lot about his history, about his education, and his feeling about potential alien gods.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a lot for you to get into. I anybody who hasn't taken the time to read that article, I know it's been pretty popular, but this guy's really on to some fun stuff. He and his partner Jeremiah are out there, and he's quite a character. You're gonna have a great time with him. He's got a lot going on. Interesting guy.
So if people want to check out that art, what's the title of that article, just so people know? Oh, if you didn't know, writers don't write their own headlines.
Yeah,
so.
right. Okay, I can tell you the original headline was anti-gravity, ancient aliens, ET gods, and the man who's solving the mysteries of the universe. Something like that, right?
So who acts that over the debrief?
Oh, well, who do you think? Come on. Who makes the headline? MJ, Captain Sexy, Captain Canada Benias dove in there, and he said, your SEO skills suck, your headline writing skills suck. Let me fix this headline. And hey, the thing's been read a gazillion times, so what can I say? Maybe he was right.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. So what do you you said you had some personal thoughts. So let's bust into this UAP topic. I think it's so relevant right now. Yesterday we really talked about Steven Greer and what he was released, the cosmic hoax, and we dug into that. But I'm really curious what your thoughts kind of are on from that perspective about what the U.S. government knows, what they're telling us, and why, and maybe a little bit about what your thoughts are on. I don't know if you had a chance to watch his documentary or not, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So
I do have thoughts on it. Let me give a little background if you don't mind, since you told me I'm here for a couple hours. So
yeah, man, the floor is yours.
So when I was young, I started reading about UFOs in the late 70s when I was a little kid, and I've been following it since then. So I don't have any fantastic inside information. I haven't met with any government officials that have shared any videos or anything, but I do feel like I offer over 40 years of just following it closely. And what I'd like to say about Steven Greer is there was a point in time where that guy was the shit. And I don't know if we say stuff like that on this show, but in 2001, we were 20, 25 years into a dead zone. You know, when Blue Book closed in 69, the 70s UFOs were a joke. They were a joke on TV. They were a joke on movies, and really kind of continued through the 80s. In the 90s, X-Files and some other things were starting to bring it serious. But when Greer came out at the National Press Club and had all of those witnesses, some of which have proven out to be great and some maybe not so great, it was unfounded. There'd never been anything like it. You know, there was no 2017. There was no Lou Elizondo. There was no videos. Right. It was just this wasteland of, you know, Blue Book in 69 said nothing to it, and that was it. It was over 30 years of nothing. And there was a lot of theories and fake alien videos and maybe real videos. We don't know. But yeah, there was a point in time where Steven Greer was a really impressive person. I think, unfortunately, and I don't know him personally, so I want to be careful to talk about where someone's personal life is. Right. But I can tell you that he's taken a different direction. He's taken a completely different direction. And there was a point in time right after that where he was talking about the government was not letting us see the technology. They had it. It had crashed at Roswell, maybe other places. They had 0-point energy systems. That's what fueled these things. And that technology was holding society back. That was keeping us from getting into the 21st century. Even can you explain? Can you quickly explain 0-point energy? What that? Sure. What that so 0-point energy is a purely theoretical energy. It's featured a lot in science fiction and things like Stargate and stuff. But it really just comes from the idea of pulling energy from the vacuum, of space. So theoretically, something handheld size could tap into as much energy as like a planet's worth of nuclear reactors. So the idea behind it is this physics-based idea within special relativity, not general relativity, where you could access power from the vacuum. And so it's a theory. It's a purely theoretical device. Got it. And so he felt like the ETs were visiting. They had access to this sort of energy. The government knew about it. The government wasn't telling us about it. And the big problem is that they were blocking humanity from being able to access unlimited energy because they were afraid the big oil and things like that would get slammed. Is that kind of the idea? Sure. Think about the money spent on transportation. Think about the money spent on space programs, flying stuff up to the space station. And yeah, the widespread use of fuels, things like that, there was definitely a march by him, and he created a company called Space Energy Access Systems Power, SEAS Power, SEAS Power, and he raised money and went out, and it was a very Tom DeLonge type of venture where he was bringing people in, and we're gonna go out and find the inventors that are doing this. We don't need aliens to do it. We don't need to back engineer it. There are guys like Mark Sokol, you mentioned, sitting in their garage figuring this technology out. And we're going to reach out to those people. We're going to incubate them like a business incubator. We're going to fund them, and we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to transform the world. And he had a lot of near misses, but nothing that turned out to be real technology. And he abandoned it and kind of disappeared for a while before he came back up with CE5.
Right. Right. And then so CE5 is the technology, the meditative type technology that's used to contact. Is that the idea?
My understanding of it is it's a fantastic way to get rich people to give you money and sit in the desert. But, yes, the idea, I think your fans know this probably better than I do, but yes, the idea behind CE5 is exactly that rather than waiting for the governments to make contact or scientists to make contact, that there's a thought involved, kind of a Jacques Vallée sort of theory where there's a thought component to this, and that if you go out there and you do it the right way, you can talk to aliens mentally. Right.
So, and then we've saw this shift. We've seen him really shift over the last, I think in the last documentary that he launched, at the end, I think he talks about this sort of threat narrative, government hoax. And then he really goes into it in this one. But that's a major beeline from where he was before. Any thoughts on the redirection?
So here's what I'll say about I'm not sure with Steven. It's really hard to tell at this point. It's really hard to tell a guy that went from let's disclose everything to forget the government, let's find the energy on our own, to I'm not quite sure what this latest position is, other than to say
it's a false flag.
It's a false flag. It's a threat narrative. Here's what I'll say. In 1952, the U.S. government was exactly where we are now. The Navy had spent 5 years, the Air Force had spent 5 years from 47 to 52 looking at exactly what we're seeing now. Fighter pilots, commercial pilots, people seeing stuff in the air that seemed mechanical. It seemed like a vehicle, seemed to be doing things no vehicle we have could do. And they called that John Sanford press conference, the biggest press conference since World War II. And the head of the Air Force sat down, one of the top guys of the Air Force sat down and said, look, we've looked at it all. There seems like there is probably something here. It was eerily similar to what just happened with the UAPTF. It said there's definitely something here. We're going to look into it. The problem is when you employ the military to look at something, there has to be a reason for the military to be looking at it. This was a science problem in 1952, not a military one. But we were right out of World War II. We were in the throes of the Cold War, and there was no time, money, energy, or impetus to go, hey, are these aliens coming to say hi? So there was an effort to see, is this a threat, right? And from 52 to 69, whatever you think about Blue Book and publicly and the Condom Report and these other things that came out of it, one thing we know for sure is behind the scenes, the military themselves ultimately went, we're better off spending our time and energy worrying about the Soviet Union. And these things, whether they're a threat or not, we got to be done with it. Because let's be honest, if something could come here from another solar system, they don't have to have lasers or bombs or anything creative. They could skip out to the edge of our solar system, go to the Kuiper Belt, grab the biggest rock they can find, and just throw it at us, and we're all dead. So it's not if they were here if they're ETs and they were here for a threat, we'd have been dead in 1947.
Right.
It just seems crazy to me, though, that I mean, it seems like the topic every decade or two gets put on the front burner for about 10 minutes, and then it gets taken off once it starts boiling and put right back onto a dead burner, or no fire at all, and then until it's lukewarm. And it seems to always be the reason why is when they do look at these things, when these objects, these reports come across the right desks.
Yep.
they look at it and they go, ah, it's 1960. I've got the Russians putting, nuclear weapons in Cuba. So I think that is going to take precedent over these weird little things my pilots are seeing that aren't hurting anybody.
Yep.
They come close. Sure, it's scary, but it seems at some point, like even I think the latest naval secretary said this, or the latest retired naval secretary said, these things in some cases showed like it was playing around with us, like a puppy.
Wow.
It's like, at what point is there not going to be something important enough to where, okay, look, let's put this on the front burner. Let's actually study this. Let's look at this for as long as it takes. I mean, what is it going to have to be one of these things running into a commercial airliner? Is it, like what has to happen?
I can tell you what's new and exciting here towards that question. First of all, 2017 to now is like no other time in this. I started following this at 8 years old. When shit happened in 2017, this became a whole new ballgame. And it really is, we're in a whole new world. So this isn't a 1 year blip and it disappears. We really.
So you don't. Okay. I just want to put an exclamation point on that, because I think that's something that a lot of people are really concerned about. Is that these things come around into the public, and we get they kind of tease us, and then it disappears again. And so, are you saying you don't think that's going to happen this time?
Let me tell you why, Mike. Because at the Debrief, as you noted, I'm a science writer. I don't really cover UFOs over there. I have a tremendous interest, like the guys who founded it. I interact with them on stories. Sometimes I get to pre-read things, but it's not really what I cover. But suddenly, about a month, beginning of June, the new head.
Are we losing him?
A little bit.
A little bit.
You're breaking up. Uh-oh.
I'm not talking about who else is the biggest space administration in the world.
So we pretty much we pretty much lost everything you said until
at the
a couple
debrief.
months ago.
We lost you at the Debrief in June. You started writing about this.
Yeah.
Let me see what's going on with my. Yeah, it shows I have Wi-Fi. All right. So in June,
You're good
the
now.
Debrief put out a story written by me. That was the first time I got into this UFO thing over there. That the new head of NASA, Bill Nelson, former senator from Florida, was coming in, and he said, he was doing a press conference about the new Venus missions. And right at the end of the press, and I was writing about the new Venus missions because I cover NASA. And right at the end of the press conference, just somebody asked him about UAP, and he kind of says, I saw the report when I was in Senate Intelligence. And
he said it gave him chills on the back of his neck, yeah?
Yeah, so that first conversation was kind of a, we're going to look at it sort of thing.
Right.
Well, thank goodness CNN jumped right on him. And like 5 hours later, he was sitting down with a reporter from CNN. And she got into it with him. And he said all of those things. And he did a follow-up interview. So I've written a couple articles now about NASA and their involvement here. To me, that's the most exciting change. I speak to astrobiologists, I speak to astronomers, I speak to people in what we would consider mainstream science. And just in my lifetime, the idea of life out there has gone from wacky to more or less a given. I don't really have any scientist ever tell me anymore, I think there's no life anywhere. I think this is it. That is huge to me.
Right.
When you start bringing people that do this for a living, people with a scientific method, and they're working with the military that has these great sensors and technology and satellites and all of this stuff. If we could use the military's equipment and NASA scientists, I think we really got a chance of getting somewhere, if there's somewhere to get.
Right, and you spoke with Abel Mendez recently, and you were about to post this article about NASA, and they released on their FAQ page that they aren't specifically looking for UAPs, but they're interested. Right? Is that kind of it? And then you spoke to Abel, and he said, "What did he say?" Oh, lost him again. It's the CIA, man. Susan Goff is at it. This is. We are in
our ice cream truck in front of his house, jamming a signal with the song.
Yeah. Christopher Plane. Okay, well, we'll just kind of jam with it as he's popping in and out. Hopefully, he'll be able to get back with us real soon. And it's not actually Susan Goff in his neighborhood jamming his signals. I would consider that an act of war, Luis. Yeah, you?
I don't know if I want to lob. I don't know if I want to lob that accusation at Susan Goff. But if she is in an ice cream truck in front of his house, that would just be weird. You know, like at the least.
Yeah.
I thought that it was interesting that he was talking about. Do you think it's the fact that times have changed and that scientists are just more willing to admit that they think that life would have to be in other places because it's not so much of a faux pas to say?
Well, yes, and I also think that there's more data than there's ever been, right? So we're discovering exoplanets all the time now in the Goldilocks zone near all the stars, and so when you have what is it again? 10 stars in our galaxy, 10 stars for every grain of sand on Earth, and then you have the amount of exoplanets in Goldilocks zones around those planets, and you know, astronomers are now going, my God, these things are everywhere. There should be life everywhere, and that's where the Fermi paradox comes in.
Right, and I didn't know. Okay, I was reading about it today in a Brown book in fiction. That a lot of scientists believe that our planet was actually seeded from life on other planets by a meteor because it all sped up at the same because it all sped up so quickly. Right. And I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah, we're all starseed. Chris, are you back with us?
It appears, at least for the moment. Well, you know, my Wi-Fi says it's fine. I don't know what's doing. So.
Okay,
right.
so where did we lose him, Lou? Where did we lose him?
We were losing him at Bill Nelson and this exciting times
Who
where
cares?
NASA.
Let me talk about something else.
Yeah, no. Well, I
talk about UFOs versus UAPs.
Sure. I mean, I did like the Bill Nelson conversation. I do think
I'm happy to talk
it's
about
fascinating, but I'm curious what your opinion from a science writer. I mean, what's NASA's budget realistically? How much do you think you're going to devote to this? And how much would they say? How much would they need?
So that's a good question.
Yeah,
I think an important thing to keep in mind here is we're talking about two different skills, right? We're talking about data gathering and data analysis. So that's where I'm thinking the best bet is the military being the data gathering arm, where they're grabbing us, videos and whatnot. I'm sorry, I'm having a problem here.
Are you good?
No, you're good, right?
So to me, that's the best combination, the best way to use that collection of assets. So having NASA scientists look at this data, evaluate the data, is probably a couple $1 million a year if they were really to get into it. It's probably not a ton. Now, if they have to start building sensors and building equipment, that's where the vast majority of NASA's budget goes. I wrote a huge feature on the James Webb Telescope, and I can tell you that the payment to people to build the components are 1,000 times more expensive than the components. So the money you put into just creating these tools and creating these things that you're going to use is the vast amount. And we know that's where all of our tax monies go, right? We know the military's got all these satellites, these SOSUS nets under the ocean. We know part of the reason they don't want to share this fast mover information is because it shows other militaries how we're sensing where they are in the ocean, where they are in the sky, and we don't want to share that.
Isn't this the problem, though? Is that good scientists can't get the classified data?
Right. So, and that was the feature. Mike, I called you when I was working on that piece, and I said, I need someone in mainstream science to tell me how they can answer this question without the data, right? Right. And of course, that's when I spoke to Abel Mendez, who runs the facility down there in Puerto Rico that was featured in the movie Contact. And he's a mainstream astrobiologist. And I said, you tell me what's going on here. And he said, look, Chris, without information, it's a waste of time. It's a complete waste of time. And I think that's what right. I think this is really the craziest thing that might have come out of this whole report is all the people talking behind the scenes about it, all the Elizondos and Mellons and Harry Reeds and other people, Bob McGuire talking about the evidence we haven't seen. Because
Right.
in my mind, that's created an evidence bubble. We now know it's there. You are going to have to show it to. This isn't Roswell. Do we think you have a spaceship? Do we think you have a body? This is video, photo, and that's what I hear. The people I talk to, that's what I hear. Video evidence of things showing the observables. Photo evidence of things that seem to have no control surfaces. Maybe a triangle photo, right? And by the way, speaking of which, I would just like to say, I told this to Madeline before. When I started at the debrief, I told him, never show me the triangle photo. Don't give me a copy because I will leak it immediately. There is an obligation to humanity for this data to be out there, Mike and Christine, Luis. There's an obligation to humanity. We're all people. This is our data, okay? They might have used some fancy equipment to gather that data, but this is our data. And it's a bubble net. We know it's there.
Right.
We know there's more photos. We know there's more video. It's just
right. Larry threw us a super chat, said the evidence of absence isn't the absence of evidence. The interesting question for science is why can't we hear them? Not are they real? Non-real aliens is too illogical a game to play. Thank you for that.
Why can't we hear them?
Well, I think the idea is that we need, just because we don't have the evidence doesn't mean it's not there, and there is evidence behind closed doors. We're just not being given we're just not being given access.
You know, I'm not a Men in Black or a conspiracy guy, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that over the last 70 years, when really great photos or really great videos are taken by people, that those are gathered for security reasons. I know if I was out shooting photos of Los Alamos in 1946, they would have my photos. I wouldn't have those. So I don't think it's the least bit unreasonable to think that that's been going on. And we know for sure it's been going on since 2004 because it's a big part of that report. So...
Well,
right.
it does make sense because NASA, I guess, is a wing of the government. It is a government-funded agency. So that would sort of solve the issue of, well, how do you get academia to look at this? You know, how do you get science to look at this? Because you can't give this classified information to a bunch of kids at MIT or, you know, a bunch of professors because you just have no idea. You can't control that information. But if the government wants to science, it says, all right, you guys... we can give you guys the satellite images. We can give you guys the videos, and then you can write the papers. But I mean, oh God, I have a real hard time imagining NASA writing that paper. Like I really, really do. Even with all of the access to that information, I mean, is Bill Nelson obviously is the head of NASA, but do you think the rest of NASA is in tune or in lockstep with what he's saying, that if they do say, let's say they do get that kind of access, and then the next 5 years they can determine, oh my God, this is real.
Okay, so what the people, you know, I talk to people at NASA from headquarters to JPL to wherever, you know, and I can tell you that the attitude right now is a little bit wait and see. I don't know that anyone over there knew he was going to come out and announce this. And my experience with senators is they do it on their own time and they don't really care.
It seemed rogue to me. I mean, he was only in his position for a month, and then he starts talking about this on national television. I guarantee you all of NASA's going...
Well, John Greenwald, through a FOIA request, got the information out that there were talking points that were sent in an internal memo in NASA given to Bill Nelson, and he went way off script, not just once, twice. You know, like he knows this. He's not supposed to go this far, but I'm curious to know why he's breaking those parameters that have been set.
Honestly, Luis, I don't think this is hyperbole. I honestly think he saw that evidence and went, holy F. I really do. When I reach out to people at NASA, they're kind of telling me, like, we're waiting to see the evidence. We're waiting to, you know, give our opinion. But there will be an opinion. You know, NASA is not going to shut up now that he's made this announcement. The scientists, the people I'm talking to over there, they are going to look at whatever they're allowed to look at. If they're told to look at gimbal, FLIR, and go fast, I don't know that they're going to come to anything more than we've come to. But
right.
They really get this information, and if Nelson shares it with them, which he is in a position to do. I mean, he's in a position to look at the president and the Joint Chiefs and say, I've seen this stuff. I need my scientists to look at it. And from what we're hearing, I think that's where we're headed. As a matter of fact, I think that's a realistic predecessor to the Big Phone Home 2, to congressional hearings. I think it's a realistic step from here to there, is saying, all right, we've moved out of 1952. We moved out of the military gone, something's going on, but we don't give an F, to everybody saying something's going on. And I'm telling you, I talk to engineers, I talk to people, and I talk to bioscientists, and they know I work at the Debrief, and they ask me, hey, are we going to, you think we're going to see some film? Or they all know it's there now. We know that it's there.
Well, that leads me, I'm sorry, just one more quick question about NASA and the Big Phone Home, because you brought it up. Sure. Would that be something that we can ask Congress for? Like, hey, we want NASA involved in this conversation. We want them to have a budget for this, because I've always been trying to figure out a way to get more of a budget for institutions of learning, universities, things like the SCU. But
I'll
now
tell you what,
throw
Bill
this...
Nelson's the guy. He's in the position to do it. These senior committee members in the Senate and in the House, one thing they know how to do is raise money. When I was very young, I was a debater in high school, and I had the opportunity to tour Washington, D.C., and to meet with a bunch of congressmen and senators. I met Ronald Reagan. I stood 10 feet from him. I got to meet George W. Bush when he was vice president. And I can tell you, this is what these guys do for a living. Make no doubt. Bill Nelson's primary skill is raising money. I can guarantee that.
Yeah,
right.
75% of their job.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Chris. Jazz has a question. He dropped a $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Jazz. Christopher, yes or no? The universe might be so much more weird than we can imagine that the answer might be something none of us have imagined yet. And I know he didn't say dolphins, but, what are your thoughts?
Yes or no? Well, of course, yes. No, Jazz. We figured it all out. The universe is exactly a materialistic explanation. And if you fly far enough, you beat the bad guy from Star Trek 6. Yep, you got it. He's there. He's on the other side of the universe.
I would love...
I think one thing science teaches us is what we don't know. Right? One thing science and cutting-edge scientists that I talk to, they will tell me, shit's happening in the lab I have no explanation for. And they will spend months or years tracking some of these things down. Yeah, that is the forefront of not knowing. I think Jazz is completely right. With that being said, we know there are planets. We see them. We haven't directly imaged them, but we found them through the transit method and the wobble method and these other methods. So I don't know. The universe, at least the amount we can see, seems very material to me.
What do you think the changes when the James Webb telescope is up and running? To what extent are we going to actually get imagery of these Goldilocks planets, all of these wobbles that we're now inferring as planets that could and should likely contain life? What are your thoughts when it comes to our ability to actually see some of these things with the James Webb telescope?
So the good news is the James Webb telescope is going to do a bunch of amazing things. The bad news is one of the things it will not do is exactly what you just asked. It is not a visible light observatory like the Hubble. So the Hubble can take pictures of something like your cell phone camera, and you can go, oh, look, there's a planet. The James Webb is equipped with a lot of instruments that all operate in the infrared. So like FLIR imagery, the forward-looking infrared on the fighter pilot, right? So they offer, but here's the great thing. In this first phase of finding planets, and when I got into my 20s, we didn't know there were any planets anywhere. We hadn't seen any. We didn't know. We were guessing, and that was a good argument against UFOs and aliens, by the way. When I was growing up, there aren't even other planets. Forget other life somewhere. And none of them are going to be in the Goldilocks zone if they exist. And if they will, they won't be around the type of star that won't ever. But we found all of that to be false. We have found total candidate planets. And there's some really killer ones. One of them, for instance, is a system called TRAPPIST. It's 39 something, maybe 39 light years away, something like that. So, a bit of a distance. And but with this telescope, we can look at those planets and look at their atmosphere, and we can tell the composition of the atmosphere. We can look for effects of technosignatures, satellites, EM radiation, all kinds of things. So although it may not be a picture of a planet, it is not the least bit unlikely. If anything, I would say it's highly likely that the James Webb Telescope and one of these research teams will be the first one to say, we're looking at a planet that we think has life on it.
Wow.
Well, let's say they found a technosignature, say like pollution.
Right?
Do you think, again, they write the paper about it? Like,
Oh, right.
I mean,
it's heavily polluted. And my question is, would they write about it? Or what?
Yeah. Do you think they would say, well, this pollution was made by an intelligence? Do you think that's something?
Oh, okay. Well, so they're, the gases they're looking for and the things they're looking for biosignatures would not, pollution wouldn't be an issue. For technosignatures, they're not looking at the atmosphere for technosignatures. Right. They're looking for radiation. They're looking for radio signals, EM radiation, or actual physical artifacts like a Dyson sphere or a Dyson swarm, if you know what that is. So it's just a lot cheaper, easier version of a Dyson sphere because it has a bunch of satellites. You don't actually build a dome around the star. But there are a bunch of things they can look for technosignatures. Mike actually interviewed a really interesting, she had a mathematical formula for looking at technosignatures and astrobiologists. There's a bunch of ways they're looking at it. I'll have the feature on that in about a month, covering all the different ways we're looking for biosignatures and all the different ways we're looking for technosignatures. But in absence of an answer, an ET answer to the UFO mystery in the short term, we're not very far from mainstream science pointing at a planet going, we think there's life here.
Wow. Tina says she actually helped Bill Nelson's campaign when he ran for Congress back in '86. So Tina, I know you got the hookup. Make sure you connect us with Nelson. Let's get him on the show.
Oh my God, I would love it. I would love to get Bill Nelson on this show.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Tina Tamaszewski. She's the moderator for Creepy Little Book, Pete's channel.
He's elected office, yeah.
He was.
He's no longer.
Oh, he's no longer, right?
Right.
Well, he's just got to wait till he's campaigning.
He literally just left and is now at NASA.
Who's that?
Bill Nelson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, there's a brand new appointment. The last NASA head was there as recently as May, I think. So, yep. There's a lot of changes going on over there. They're choosing a new planetary protection officer, if you know what that is. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening at NASA right now.
What's a planetary protection officer?
So think about the idea. I mean, we've kind of had it in theory since our first missions. But say you're sending a probe to Mars and you don't want to bring your own life to it, right? We don't want to bring bacterial life. We don't want to bring tardigrades, other microscopic life to there and pollute it, especially if it is habitable. So planetary protection officer traditionally, or someone running that role at NASA, would normally have a clean room and work with the equipment and work with everything to make sure that when that thing goes into the nose cone of the rocket and is sent up, there is nothing resembling Earth life on it. So if it does land someplace where life could grow, we don't essentially pollute it, right? We come back 20 years later and there's a whole bunch of moss growing there and we go, yeah, that was us.
Right.
So the other half of that, though, is we're now in sample return era. So when I was a kid, this is something we would dream about. The guys went to the moon and picked up bags of rocks and brought them back, right? But other than that, we really couldn't. We would go out to space and we couldn't bring anything back. Well, now we're bringing stuff back. We're going to comets. We're going to meteors. We're going to planets. And we have more missions planned, including Mars, where we're going to bring samples back. So the planetary protection officer will handle that on the other side. They will make sure that something that comes in goes into an environment where we're not gonna have an Andromeda strain. So.
Right. Well, and also we want to make sure that we're actually, if we do discover life in these rocks that we bring back, we want to make sure it's actually life from the rock and not from the Earth, right? I mean, that's critical, or else we've just wasted all of our time sending these $1 million rockets to Mars and we've contaminated it on the way.
Something astrobiologists tell me a lot, and I think something that's worth keeping in mind is that
Thank you, Holly.
Our solar system's a little over 4 billion years old, and the planets in this solar system, the term one of them used with me is they've been swapping spit that whole time, right? So we find Mars rocks on Earth, and when we're on the moon, we found Earth rocks, we'll find Mars rocks. All of this mixes. So the truth of the matter is, because we know there is life here, there's some sort of biogenesis, whether it was panspermia, which your wife mentioned, which is a big favorite theory of mine, or it was a biogenesis event here on Earth or somewhere else in the solar system. I think when and if we do find life at, Europa or Ganymede or Titan or these other places we're looking in the solar system, I wouldn't be the least bit shocked if it's very similar to what we have here,
Right.
microbiologically, and probably originated.
Right. We are about 10 minutes past resetting the room, so let me go ahead and do that real quick. Christopher Plain, it's so amazing to have you. For those of you who don't know Christopher Plain, not only is he the lead science writer at The Debrief, he's also a comedian and a fiction writer. The dude wears many hats. He's a brilliant mind, and we're thrilled and thankful to have him here. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe, click the bell. We go live every Tuesday and Thursday. We've got another gentleman who Chris recently interviewed for one of his articles, Mark Sokol, who's coming on the show on Thursday, and he's working on he's an engineering mind, and he's working on anti-gravity, and he's looking for warp signatures in the solar system. I'm really curious about what that's going to be like. And for those of you who are going to be back with us tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Lou, who do we got tomorrow?
So tomorrow we got the dragon.
Oh, that's right. We got the dragon.
We got the dragon from Skinwalker Ranch. So come check it out. He's going to help us review episode 9. And then we're going to go over the day's news and stuff like that in the first hour with everybody, and it should be fun. And
then Friday?
You guys talk about him all the time. He has theme music in the back of my head.
The dragon?
And the dragon. It's from How I Met Your Mother. There's this weird song that the hippie guy makes up. Anyways, there's a point where he goes, and the dragon. So that's what I hear every time.
That's appropriate.
Discuss. Yeah. And then Friday?
We've got show favorite Jamarl Thomas, who will be here, talking news and events. Great. And then also Zach Seichi from Project Human. He's an incredible podcaster and interview, and a really wonderful voice in this UFO UAP discussion.
Amazing.
It's going to be a lot of fun. But next week is going to be
off the chain.
Just bonkers.
Off the chain. If you haven't subscribed to the Unidentified Celebrity Review, make sure you click the link below. Go follow Luis and I over there, and we'll see you on Wednesday and Friday. And then we've also got an amazing special surprise guest coming on later on Thursday here at the Singularity Lab that Chris is going to get for us. Yeah.
Yep. I promised you that. You asked me when you had to leave the debrief to go full time over here because you and Luis were doing 5 shows a week. I made you my word. I said I will feed you secret guests from the debrief whenever I can. And as it turns out,
please,
on Thursday,
I do not want the debrief to hate me more than they already do.
The debrief does not hate you.
No, I'm kidding.
Millen follows you on Twitter.
I was kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
But I mean, if anybody could tell us, the folks at the debrief, their thoughts about us, it would be Chris Millen or Christopher Plain, wouldn't it be? It's actually Tim McMillan who's cutting the feed. It's not Susan Goff.
Tim McMillan's in that ice cream truck. Tim McMillan in the ice cream truck serving German ice cream.
McMillan's taking me down.
He knew you were going to share that triangle photo.
Yeah, no, I know. I told you. I said it before when I first met him. I said, "Don't you dare show that to me, because that will go to the world. I will be fired."
So how did you stumble upon the debrief? Like, how did you end up working over there?
Mike, what a great question. I wish it was on the sheet of questions I wrote for you. Oh wait, it is right there at the top. How did Chris come to the debrief? Michael, it's funny you would ask. So I was on Twitter tooling around like everybody, right? It was the pandemic. I'm tooling around. I'm looking for a place to sell my books. I'm not going to lie. I'm a fantasy writer. I got a science fiction novel coming out, and I'm on the interweb. And this Tim McMillan, right? He's on the UFO Twitter, and he's talking about, he's working on a big story, and a lot of people are talking about big stories. And I just tweeted him for fun. At this point, I think I got 5 followers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just tweeted him for fun. I said, Tim, here's my top 3 guesses. And I just gave him what I thought my top 3 guesses were going to be in the report. And he replied to my tweet and said, Chris, 2 of those 3 are wrong. Well, UFO Twitter erupted, right? And all of a sudden, I had attention, and I was selling books, right? And I went, okay, this is working. So this theory is in the works. We're going to sell books, and we're going to talk about UFOs. So like everyone else, I followed the debrief. It opened on November 30th. I was up at night waiting for that midnight Tim's big article to come, and for my money, did not disappoint. And 8 days later, I'm on the Twitter. I'm looking at the debrief. I'm done, and MJ puts out a request, the editor-in-chief. And he says, if you're a writer and you write in our fields, reach out to me and maybe you can work for free. And I said, work for free? And write about aliens? I'm in. So I just started writing for UAP research at the time. So I told him at the time, I said, I will not write about UFOs. I'm writing about that over at this other place. And I'll write science for you guys. And he says, Chris, that's all I want. I got UFOs coming out of my ass. So, which is really weird.
Well, then, somebody please send some instruments over to Tim McMillan's ass, because if the proof is coming out of there, dude, I mean, why do we need NASA?
So yeah, long story short, I joined up. I met Mike Mataluni, fell in love, and have been giving him all the debrief secrets since. Every day I have a debrief meeting. First thing I do, I text Mike. Send him all the pictures and video.
Oh, man.
Just to reset the room, he is kidding. He does not give me all the inside info at the debrief. But look at what Jazz says.
What does he
Jazz,
call that? Kristen, does your wife, do you call it the debrief as well, like he does?
I don't know.
How do you say it?
No, probably not. He has some weird pronouncey things. That's probably why our daughter has weird pronounce. What was the other thing you kept saying recently that everyone kept saying? You said it so strangely.
Oh, the expanse.
The expanse.
I kept saying the
and it's South Park. Our daughter says South Park.
It's so bizarre. I just said the expanse, but it's how do you say it? How are you supposed to say it? Expand. The expanse. The debrief.
Now, see, there you go. Look at that. I like the way you say it.
The debrief. Is it the debrief or the debrief? Is it the debrief?
I say the debrief. Right? Where do you work? I work at the debrief. Or if you ask Mike and Madeline, I work at the debrief.
Or if you're in France, it's le debrief.
Le debrief.
Le debrief. Yeah. Exactly. A lot of people don't know that. It's also
Jazz says his story sucks. His debrief story was way less cool, unfortunately.
The weirdest thing was I met Jazz when I was writing for the other place. We did one of these podcasts together, and the guy who was running it forgot to record it, and then he made us do it all over again. And one thing you guys know is a pissed off Jazz is a great interview.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
He was on fire that day.
Oh, boy.
Look, guys, I only got so much time. All right.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes here, Mike. Did you?
I feel like I'm failing as a show host today. You're literally referring to your own notes that you sent me ahead of time.
Well, there's stuff I want to make sure I cover. Okay, when the triangle photo covered that. Okay. Disclosure is next month. Oh wait, I'm not.
We could just put it up on the screen with a little check mark.
Oh,
right. Well, I could get it
Can
up
I
on
tell
the
you
screen.
why the TikTok has changed everything, Mike?
Chris, do you have any insight as to why you think the TikTok has changed everything? Oh, there's his notes.
Awesome. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's great.
What are we not covering?
This is my favorite. You know, Luis, when you met Mike Mataluni, you saw him doing the live broadcast of the Mars rover landing. Is that correct? That's what I heard?
Yeah, well, actually, I had interviewed him before the Mars rover landing.
Really?
Yeah, I interviewed him for my show, and then we as soon as he turned on the camera, I was like, oh, this dude's cool. And we had a really fun interview, and then I saw the Mars rover landing, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm going to do for the Big Phone Home. That's a perfect format. I was like, it's brilliant. I mean, it's just you guys were rotating in and out guests. Everybody had a really great opinion and viewpoint and what they were doing at the debrief. And I was like, hell yeah, this is freaking awesome. And then I was like, okay, well now I got the format. Let me see if Michael will help me with it. And so I reached out to Michael. I was like, hey, dude, look, I love the format. Would you be interested in helping me host this 8-hour show? Like, I was like, you've never met me before in your life. I mean, like in person, I've only had that 1 hour long interview with you or however long it was. And it was just like, he's like, absolutely. I would love to do it.
Awesome.
It's like, cool. Yeah. All right.
And
we're
then
doing this.
Do you remember, Kristen? Like
Yeah.
what I said? Did I mention it ahead of time?
You were like, I'm doing a broadcasting thing for 8 hours. I was like, 8 hours? That's wackadoo.
That's wackadoo. It sounded crazy, but it worked.
It worked.
It was amazing.
Look who we got in the house. It's Go Che.
Ooh, Go Che.
He's actually an actor on The Expanse. Is it? Did I do it right?
The
Did I-
Expanse. Yeah, you did.
Did I do it?
Yeah,
Expanse.
I mean, you looked
Expanse?
really awkward when you did it. Like,
South Park.
yeah.
It is.
South Park.
You guys need a little comic bit called X Pants.
Expanse. The
Expanse.
I'm not
Those
going to.
written notes, Luis. That's a little look behind the scenes of that live Mars broadcast. That's where Mike and I really hit it off. Was he would come
That's
to me
right.
at the debrief with interviews and other shows and stuff, and I would say, "Hey, let me get hammering," and I would send him these notes of questions. As a matter of fact, when you guys interviewed Lou Elizondo, I wrote him 23 questions, of which he used one. It was a very good question. It was an excellent question.
Everybody was like throwing questions at
Oh,
us
of
for that
course.
interview. It was
Oh
wild.
my god.
It was
I
wild.
remember the first day you were like, because I was doing live interviews and you were like, this is really great, Mike. Like, I think I can punch up your show. And I was like, cool. And you like came up with all these bits and like ideas. And I was like, this is fantastic. And then you go back and then you watched one of my interviews and you were like, oh, you're actually intelligent. I thought you were just a dumb. You did. He said that to me. He goes, I thought you were just a dumb, pretty face and running this show. And he's like, no, you're listening to what people are saying. You can kind of articulate it back to them. I was like, wow.
It turns out he's not an idiot.
He's so
I
well
was shocked.
spoken.
I was sure he was a moron. I was convinced. All I heard was.
Oh, we lost him again. McMillan's pissed. Where's he at? Oh no. He'll be back. We'll get it.
Yeah. Well, once he gets his glasses on, that's when it comes back.
Yeah. So his glasses are on now, so he should be back any second. This is kind of fun, like rehashing like how all this came together, like how the Big Phone Home came together, how Chris Plain had a part in like writing my script for the Mars live landing.
Yeah, that.
What's that? Oh, there we go. He's back.
There he is.
My microphone. There we go. Can
There you
hear
go.
me?
Yep.
There we
Tell
go.
me my mic was up. Yeah, I think my wife's got like 6 Alexas running right now. So I forgot to tell her I'm being interviewed. Couldn't care less.
Michael desperately wants the fiber.
Yeah.
We can't get the fiber. We talked to our cable guy recently, and apparently, unless
really?
you live in a new area,
Yeah.
they give you like pretend fiber. They like run it a little ways and then just hook it to the wireless box.
Yeah, it's super whack.
Oh man,
Exactly.
it's not
That's
real.
what I use for my diet is pretend fiber. If you want to do a pretend cleanse, it's great.
I can't with you, Christopher Plain. I can't.
Now I'm
G West with a $5
Start
with
the
a
show. I'm Chris. Everybody's my pal. Now all right, I'll tell you what, Mr. Mataluni. Here's
What do you got?
Ooh, I see a money question.
Yeah.
G West $5 dono. Can you have a future Big Phone Home on Catalina Island for live show UAP search and wine mixer, of course?
I mean, yes.
A Catalina wine mixer. I love it.
I would love that.
Look at that view of plane. Just
I've been
beautiful.
to Catalina when I was a kid. and I took the seasick pills. And my dad offered to spit so that I could have enough spit to swallow the seasick pills. It was disgusting.
Wait.
When you're a little
Spit
kid.
in your mouth?
Yes.
What?
Ew, I know, like a baby bird. We didn't have anything to drink, and I told him I couldn't swallow the seasick pill.
Oh, God.
He didn't
So you
do
just
it.
saved up some
He was
saliva?
probably
And
just
then...
trying to gross me out.
That's horrifying.
This
Wow.
week in Florida.
Wow. What did Chris say about Florida?
I said, this week in Florida. You thirsty, honey? Come here.
That sounds right. It sounds like a Florida story. It's a Catalina story, though.
Well,
The
Chris,
Catalina wine mixer story.
you said something earlier about UFO versus UAP. What was that conversation you wanted to get into?
So
yeah.
here's, I don't want to get political. It'll make a minor point.
Yeah.
When Osama bin Laden was found and shot, for anybody who, like me, want to torture themselves and flipped over to Fox News to see how they were covering it, they were saying Osama bin Laden. And I couldn't for the life of me in conservative radio. And I have another friend.
Alexa's at it again.
Alexa, free up the Wi-Fi.
Alexa, kill the Wi-Fi, please.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait.
Oh. Well, as as Chris is coming back in and chasing his wife off of Alexa so that he can get some Wi-Fi bandwidth, we'll go ahead and reset the room here. For those of you just joining us, we've got Chris Plain. He is the lead science writer at the Debrief. He is also a comedian and fiction writer. So make sure, if you haven't also followed him on Twitter, make sure you do so. We actually had a race to see who can get to 1,000 followers first, and I smoked his ass. But we're trying to get him to 1,000 followers. So if you could follow at plain_fiction on Twitter, that would be dope, because he is the man and he's funny as hell. And we've also got a couple of amazing guests joining us right now. First of all, we've got Manny Miranda, who is an Army veteran and podcast host, covers everything from current events, history, to UAP, to the occult. Manny Miranda, how are you, sir? Oh, you're muted. Not yet. So you find the unmute button, and we'll have you back in just a second. But let me go ahead and interview. Oh, we got Chris Plain back.
There he was.
Chris, can you hear us, bro? Can you hear us?
I don't know. Can you hear me? I hear you. Can you guys see and hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
It's like Sesame Street, near and far. We're far away now.
Yeah, we're far away. What happened?
Every time
No,
I
it's
tip the
sideways.
phone, it makes it upside down. I tried to go to my phone because my sticky laptop wasn't working. So
That's all right. That'll work.
We've also got Victor Richie with us today. Victor is one of the founders of the National UFO Night Out Skywatch event. As a USAF veteran, he has a unique perspective on several areas of the phenomenon, including the threat narrative. He actually wanted to come on and speak specifically about this this evening as well. Welcome, Victor.
Thank you. Welcome. I mean, happy to be here, Michael. Nice to see all of you guys. Kristen, Lou. Nice to meet you, Manny.
How's it going, man? How you doing?
Good.
Can you guys hear me now?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we can hear you great.
Yeah, all right, we're on. I accidentally just kicked Christopher Plain. My bad.
Oh no!
Accidentally. I like that. You should have done a quote accidentally. Threw his ass out.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's the way I roll. But he should be here in a second. I'll pop him back in as soon as he does. I don't know, Michael, if you want to hit him up and tell him I accidentally kicked him.
Yeah, why don't you keep us going? Tell people to subscribe and what you got going
absolutely.
on.
So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the channel, share the channel. We're up to 118 watchers right now. It's a pretty big audience for the size of this channel. So that's thanks to people like you sharing everything and helping us as much as you can. Also, if you want to help support the show, don't forget to check out our Patreons. Both of our Patreons are in the link below. Think of this as a public access channel. Your donations and your support help us keep the lights on. So make sure you help us do that if you can. And if you can't, don't sweat it. There's no hidden shows. There's no special, access. Everybody gets the same access to the exact same show 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Tuesday and Thursday right here on the Singularity Lab. So with that out of the way, we've got Kristen back. Did you message Christopher?
I did. We'll see if we can get
Okay.
it back in. I think
Cool.
he's still having some Wi-Fi issues, but hopefully he'll be able to jump back in.
No worries. Is there anything else you'd like? Oh, I mean, would you like me to delay some more?
No, I think we're ready to go. I'm excited
great.
I'm excited to talk
'Cause
about.
I had a whole nother 3 or 4 minutes if you need.
Did you really?
Was it delayed?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I could have gone on forever. And here we got Christopher playing.
Oh, there we go.
Yay.
All
All
right.
right,
right.
it's
Yay.
on.
Brady Bunch.
It's on.
It's on.
And
So I
asked the
want.
wife to kill all the Alexas. So
Did it, okay, she killed all the Alexas,
Maybe
so
it
you're good to go.
I guess I should, she probably have 8 things streaming all around the house. So.
All right, so I wanted to get back, Chris. Again, thank you. Shoot, we're gonna have to bring you back on, Chris, because we got a lot more to talk about with you. We hardly got to like your entire list, so we're gonna have you back. But while you're here, I wanted to. I was chatting with Victor today, and he was talking about this threat narrative, and I know we covered it a little bit, but Victor, you said you had some a take on that, and I wanted to hear what your perspective was.
Sure, I appreciate that. Got to tell you, I really over prepared for this. So if
You're
I
not the
go
only
long
one.
on anything, just cut me off.
Yeah, no worries. Chris Plain did the same thing. You'll be fine.
Okay.
I wrote questions. So.
Did you? Well, when I'm kind of starting at the UAPTF report, the preliminary report, because I think that's the most recent news we've had from Washington, and that report's really the most current document addressing UFOs and UAPs as threats. And I think it's important to remember, because a lot of people seem to forget this when they're talking about it, from the beginning, the mandate given to the task force is threat evaluation. It says that the DNI, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense, is to submit an intelligence assessment of the threat posed by unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, and the progress the UAPTF has made in understanding this threat.
Right.
That mandate is why the task force exists. So, of course, the report focuses on that. But we need to point out the report described the threat exclusively in terms of posing a threat, a danger to commercial and military air traffic. There was no conclusion of a national security threat. Let's be real here. This was their chance to push national security if that was the goal. And if I was the villain that wanted to start a global military lockdown to exert control over the people, I think maybe I'd have started with this.
Wow. So your point is that when the actual preliminary UAPTF report doesn't state anything about a national security threat, the most that it states about a threat is really the air clutter bucket, and it was nothing else. So, and that's a stark dichotomy to what we just saw released by Steven Greer. No?
Yes. Oh God, yes. And I think, I think the point of this, I'm not. Don't get any illusions here. I don't think that there's not a threat narrative. There is a threat narrative, okay? I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm saying there's two aspects of it. We've got the political elected class, and I don't think they know much. I really don't. Maybe a few do. Mm-hmm. Harry Reid, some of the others. But there's a whole nother class. That's the unelected intelligence community, the Pentagon. Those people are there from one administration to the next. They have a long-term view of this, and I think they know more. And I think they're the target, but we have to go through Congress, unfortunately. So, I just think that's really where we need to start, and we need to separate those two, just kind of get it in perspective a little bit.
No, that's an important point. And something that Lou and I were working on for the Big Phone Home 2 is we really want to push hard for public hearings. We think that's, even if it's not, and I know a lot of people have a very negative idea of public hearings because generally they can often be long, they can be boring, they can be uneventful, they can, maybe we don't actually get the information talked about that we want to get talked about. So there's a lot of potential.
Right. Like they come on and then they're griping at each other over their 5-year-old arguments.
Right. Right. So that's generally the problem. But this is such a nonpartisan issue that we don't have like a really deep anger about this specific issue between the right and the left. So I think it could be something of extraordinary value.
That's true.
So we'll see. And so that's really what we want to push. So what do you guys think should be, is that where you think the next step should go to public hearings?
I do.
Yeah.
I would say what Vic just said is so on point. You guys know I have to kind of say things not necessarily directly. What you just said, describing the separation between this elected civilian governance over the military and intelligence bodies, among other things, is probably the biggest split in why this info hasn't gotten out. Because the people that are, and again, I know Lou hates going down this angle, so he's not here right now, so we'll talk about it. The same people that would have gladly accepted money from corrupt people like Jeffrey Epstein are the ones dictating what comes out. Yes. And I've said this many times, we're waiting for professional liars to tell us the truth that service members know. And that's the big issue. Yeah. Like what Vic just said, I couldn't word it any better.
Manny,
like we need congressional hearings, and we need to reach out, not just to the officers, you know what I mean, which are, you know, they do their service, they're great. We need to start reaching out to some of those enlisted people that see the day-to-day stuff that happens.
Exactly. And I think I got to tell you, 24 hours ago, I had a lot more balanced view on this, but after Greer, I'm feeling like a little bit of pushback on myself to kind of gain back some ground. We need to this might lose some folks, but I think one of the most valuable things we learned from Lou Elizondo is that he reminded us there's factions within the government, specifically the Department of Defense and the intelligence agencies at the Pentagon. Of course, I know he's not the first person to suggest that. The idea of factions has been around going back to Eisenhower, I think. But for those that haven't gone back that far in UFO history, there's been those in government that really have fought for disclosure. And I think it's easy to lose sight of that. We see this huge faceless organization in the government, and we forget it's made up of people just like us. And many of them are on our side. But they're clearly not in the majority, or we'd have had disclosure by now and be living in a different world, really. A better one, I think.
Well, I would say it's not necessarily they're not in the majority. It's that they're not the ones that have control. They're not the ones that have the control over releasing information, which is an entirely different process.
You're right.
And that's really the hard part. When you look at disclosing information, you get into legalese that's not as cut and dry as people think it is, and it's very difficult to release. If any bit of that UAP data is on some classified collection service or service or device, it's going to be, you're going to fight tooth and nail to get even a cropped image of that out. So even if they crop out the HUD, every bit of information that could give any detail to our adversaries, even just that smaller square, even that would be a legal fight to get out. So that's one of the other big issues too.
Yeah.
Right. Manny, you're a service veteran. You were in the Army, right? Is this something that you've heard from, fellow people in the service? Have you talked to people in the service who are familiar with this phenomenon and who are interested in getting their voice heard, or is it still too fringe to talk about from a service member point of view?
It depends. I mean, it depends really like on your command climate. So if you have commanders that are kind of open to people's beliefs and stuff, it's pretty open to talk about. But generally, it's very difficult to get any of this stuff out. Yeah. If it ever does come to congressional hearings, again, I can't necessarily say what field of service I did or what my job was MOS wise. But if it ever does come to congressional hearings, I'd be willing to testify. I'll say that. And that's about like the most I can say like in code. And the rest I'll say behind closed doors, same way that Ryan Graves did. And again, it was, people don't really understand what happened in that situation. You had one officer who had an in-person close encounter with a UAP do a behind closed doors congressional hearing. And his testimony was so moving that the Navy completely changed their reporting standards on UAP for the first time in its entire history. Yes. And then the Air Force followed suit. The Army, the Marine Corps, and surprisingly, the Space Force has not necessarily followed suit in setting up those SOPs, those standard operating procedures on what you report. That's an issue. The fact that we don't have one unified thing. I know the UAP preliminary assessment said they're going to do that, but you have to question, why wasn't this a thing for 80 years? We didn't just start seeing these. These aren't a new thing. They've been seen since at least World War II Foo Fighters. So why is there not a standard SOP for reporting these things? That's a big question I have.
My time in the military was with the Air Force, and I can tell you my time goes a little bit farther back because I'm older than Manny, but that's it. But it goes to a time farther back before any of this started. And I got to tell you, the Air Force right now, they're the last ones really just they're antagonistic about it. And it was like that when I was in. It's like that now. It makes sense to me, I guess, because they kind of were there at the beginning. I say the beginning, but you know what I'm talking about. The relatively modern history of this from the 40s, I guess. But yeah, I totally agree. And I would testify too, by the way.
How come? Why do you think that the Air Force is so behind on this? I mean, it's interesting because we didn't hear much from the Air Force in the preliminary report. We really heard from the Navy specifically. We didn't hear from the CIA. We didn't really hear much from the Air Force. You'd think that these UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, might be something that the Air Force has a little bit of experience with, but we didn't hear anything from them. Why is that?
They do have the experience, but that's why we haven't heard from them, because the history of them keeping disclosure from happening goes farther back. It's more entrenched. It's more embedded. I think from the very beginning. And I think a lot of the people we have right now in the intelligence community, some of the older ones, maybe the ones at the top in charge, I think their tenure goes back far enough to that mentality that they're still holding on to it now. I think the other services have changed over a lot more quickly. I mean, you know, the Air Force started as the Army Air Corps. So, you know, all this happened when it switched to its own force happened during all this going forward. And I just think that maybe that's why, I don't know. I mean, the Army is more open than the Air Force now. So it's hard to tell, but that's kind of my theory.
Right. Chris, I know you're doing a lot of writing and research with NASA. Are you hearing anything from the Air Force on your end?
You know, I think everyone's pointed out they've been suspiciously quiet on this issue. Just my feeling, and this is not from any direct information, is they feel burned on this. And I think your last guest was right, that there are enough people in senior positions that were around when this was an issue, or at least that mindset was still around in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that those senior people have brought that attitude forward. So sadly, I think shy of a directive from above, like a congressional hearing or from the president's office, the Air Force is going to stay mum on this thing. That would be my opinion.
They're going to be dragged into it.
Yeah, I mean, think about hardcore Annapolis Air Force guy we know. He and his wife decided to have no kids. I mean, maybe they really do know something.
Well, that's scary.
So what are your thoughts, Victor, when it comes to, you guys are thinking congressional hearings. Have you guys had personal experiences yourselves, or are you able to talk about that?
It's interesting. My time in the Air Force was spent primarily on Army bases because I was a liaison. So my one experience happened at Fort Hood in Texas with the Army overnight, about 3 a.m. It involved orbs, red orbs. It's a long story. I can go into it sometime, but that was my experience. And I mean, I was already a sci-fi kid anyway. And that just lit the fuse or the fire, and it's never stopped. So.
Right. So you had an experience on an Army base or Army Air Force base when you were in the service, and that kind of blew you up for that. And we're gonna have you on the Unidentified Celebrity View. When is that, Lou? When are we having?
Next week we're doing Mick and Victor on Wednesday, first hour of Wednesday.
Cool. Fantastic.
And then we're also having them back on Friday for the last 10 minutes, just to remind everybody about the Nuno event. That's coming up, which I think is a big deal.
Yeah. Do you want to quickly go over because we're gonna have you back next week on Wednesday, but do you want to quickly go over what the event that you're putting on now?
Yeah, sure. The National UFO Night Out, or Skywatch, or just Nuno Skywatch, it's on July 17th. You can find Nuno Skywatch on Twitter, Reddit, and Discord. Discord's our main hub, so I hope you'll join us for that, anyone watching. And I don't know. I mean, it's funny because in a way, a lot of what we're doing here, I think that the only way this comes out is if more people are engaged, more people involved. So as many of us as possible demanding the truth. And what we're doing with the National UFO Night Out, the Skywatch, goes to that. We want as many new people engaged in this as possible. And we want those who are already a part of this community community, but maybe haven't been motivated in a while or excited to go outside, look up, remember what all this is for. It's about finding the truth of who we are and what our place is in the universe. And we only get there if we demand the truth until we get it. That's what this is about.
Fantastic. JD wants to know a little bit more about your experience. Did you see anything else in association with the orbs controlling the lights, power, electrical components around you? Was there any other mysterious experience with that, or was it purely a sighting?
I was in a communications truck at the time, smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee. It had HF, FM, UHF, and VHF, unless I already mentioned that. But I constantly wish I could remember if there was anything I noticed about the radios when it happened. And I'd love to tell you a story, but I'd be lying. I just don't remember anything about that. But boy, I wish I knew what I know now back then, because I'm sure I would have been doing all that.
Right. What about you, Manny? Have you ever had any personal experience, or is this more about creating awareness and openness towards getting military officers the freedom to speak freely?
I have had experiences, more than one in person, one on mission. And that's one of the reasons I want to raise awareness, is because there have been multiple accounts where people reported seeing things while they were doing whatever they had to do for their job. And those things go into a vacuum. We know that's happened with the Navy. They've talked about it openly. Other branches of service haven't really been talked to. And it's not a one branch thing. This stigma that has happened where officers felt uncomfortable reporting up what their enlisted personnel were telling them goes across every single branch. And there's been multiple sightings. And again, I would testify before Congress that one of the things I reported up, and it was basically thrown into a vacuum. And then before that, I saw one when I was a kid, which again, I had no idea what it was. Again, it could have been anything. But in hindsight, essentially, it was a tic tac, but when I look back, and this is why I keep an open mind, when I look back to where I saw it, it was a place called Fort Monroe. And this place, now that I look at it, is not that far as mileage goes from the NAWCAD site over in Maryland, which is where Dr. Pais is putting all these patents. So when I saw it at the time, my father told me, my father's in special forces and stuff. So he told me, hey, listen, this is probably a secret plane. We're near Langley. It's in Virginia. Don't tell anybody. As I got older, I told people. And then obviously, as part of military service and stuff, there's background investigations. I was questioned pretty thoroughly about this thing. So I don't know how anyone would have found out about that and to question me about it. And that has been kind of one of my points of contention, which is why I push this subject so hard, because there's a lot of things that are not being talked about. There's a lot of angles that people want. Like, we all want the big explosive story of like full disclosure, but how many decades of people having sightings on mission, in person, wherever, were swept under the rug, that those people would be willing to come forward now? Like, that's the main reason I try to raise awareness, because there's probably people that have had sightings like myself, like Victor, that are still in the shadows because they're still worried about the stigma. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've never talked about my sightings until this moment in public. Like, until now, the only people that knew about it were very close family members and the government. That's it. Right. And so we have to kind of be open and allow veterans to come forward and say, listen, I saw something, I told somebody about it, and it basically went into a vacuum. Right. I had access to every type of reporting that could have been seen. I didn't see it anywhere. No one put it out. So that's my big issue. Why was there not a standard reporting system, and why was there a stigma for 80 years? Like, that's very confusing to me.
Yeah, well, that seems to be the biggest complaint that we got out of our first event, was all of these military guys would come on the show and they're pissed. They're so angry because they've devoted their time, they've done the training, they've served well, and then they have an experience, and it's either, like you said, swept under the rug, completely ignored, or worse, you're stigmatized and demoted for it. Sometimes even fired. I don't understand why our elected representatives seem to be coming around. But I think something that you said, Vic, the elements that aren't elected, the elements that have stuck through this for the last 20, 30 years, I think you're right, are starting to realize we have to start telling people. I think like part of this old regime is starting to die off, and these newer people are starting to take over. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that process. The discussion is being had at higher levels that we don't even know about yet.
That's true.
And I think those things are going to start trickling down to the public awareness. And this is the start of it. I mean, Christopher, you had said earlier, you've been studying this for a long time, and this since 2017, you haven't seen this much movement. And I agree. Like, we're winning. We're winning on this. Like, we're winning on this topic. But we also, there is a segment of this discussion, and I was talking about this earlier today, like, that has this experience, this otherworldly contact, and we're ignoring them. They're being left out of the conversation right now because it's a very strange thing to talk about. And what I'm saying is, I've had a personal experience, right? But I can't take my personal experience and lay it on the table of a senator. What are they going to do with that? But at some point, once we get everybody to the same understanding, and when I mean everybody to the same understanding that these things in our sky, they're real. They're there. They are actually there.
Yeah.
When we can get everybody on that page, I think then we can start having and really giving the spotlight and the attention to this left out community and marginalized community. And I feel terrible for a lot of these folks because a lot of these folks have been traumatized, straight up traumatized.
Say that on Twitter earlier today, that it was like gaslighting, like it's like the largest gaslighting operation.
Yeah.
Right.
People
Especially
that they're crazy.
Well, it's a huge gaslight, especially if this is some story to cover U.S. tech.
That was going to be my next question for you guys. Like, to what extent do you think a lot of these sightings are U.S.? I mean, the government is absolutely... So the preliminary report says it's not us, it's not them, but maybe it's them, right? It's not us, it's not them, but maybe it's them. There's clutter, and then there's other, but we don't really know. And I thought your point, Victor, about it not being a really... And I know it's funny, but this is what they said. I know you said that, and I appreciate what you said about the threat narrative, how they didn't really come out in the preliminary report. It wasn't like, we're under threat, give us money. So I think that's value. I think that's a really important point.
It was more like, we don't know what these things are, give us money.
Right.
like that's what it was. I mean, they asked for money, and I'm okay with that as a taxpayer. Like, I'd rather you guys publicly ask for, say, $200 million, which is nothing in the defense budget. It's nothing. $200 million a year toward this program, it's worth it. It's worth it, especially if you can set up, like Christopher was saying earlier, a good communication between, say, the intelligence community and NASA. Like, I think now we're talking about some serious headway.
Can I ask you a question about that, Lou?
Yeah.
I've been trying to find this out, and I haven't been able to get a good answer on it. When they're asking for the funding, the way I understand it, I understand why they need it, but isn't that going to be allocation of funds that are already budgeted? It's not asking for extra money in the budget, right?
Right. That's correct.
Okay. I think people should probably maybe highlight that.
Consider
for people that are not in the know.
No, that's a very good point.
Okay.
It's a very good point. I mean, it's basically they're saying, hey, give us money that we can find. Because, again,
that's a good way to put it.
To find $200 million in our budget, I mean, Christopher, maybe you could give me the math on this, but how many Scud missiles would that be? A dozen?
Chris Plain might know that. The answer to that question.
Yeah, is he there?
Can you hear us, Chris?
Is he muted?
Yeah, I don't know, but I can tell you that the two. Can you hear me? I can tell you the two Venus missions. Oh, you can't hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Me?
We got you. Yep.
No? Okay.
Yes.
The two Venus missions that are coming up, they're $500 million each. These two Venus missions.
Yeah.
So
right.
$200 million is nothing.
It's nothing. It's, I mean, well, they wrote in the debrief. There's a new.
It's nothing.
They were talking about the budget for these. What are you going to tell us? Get us with that chili pepper shirt.
When we're talking about money and we're talking about a threat narrative and we're talking about money, keep in mind, we already have a threat narrative. China is in space. Russia is in space. We're building a space force for that reason. We're not building we don't need to drum up a need to have weapons in space. That need is there, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
That need is there. And we're going to spend billions upon billions putting a space force together to deal with China, to deal with protecting our satellites, to deal with protecting our infrastructure. And we don't need to say, oh, and by the way, there might be aliens, so throw a couple of $100 extra billion in there. It's not needed. The budgets are crazy, and they're going to keep being crazy for the Space Force and the military. The military does not need to justify spending money in space, and they're going to continue to get the money they want.
Plus, don't forget that we literally over this weekend just pulled out of Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. So the money, if we needed money, we got the money right now.
Oh my God,
we're talking billions right now.
It's
just to fund that base.
Yeah. Oh,
that base
absolutely.
is wild.
It's estimated, I think, $25 billion a year is wasted in the military budget. Yeah. And then a few years back, Forbes or Bloomberg, one of them, did a whole study finding something like 35 trillion unaccounted for.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's real.
Well, I mean, every time I hear this idea that this is to get more money for a black project, I just have to laugh because you're just burning any extra money they get. There's nothing they can't get by asking. And
I'll throw this out there. I'll let Lou go first.
Well, I was going to say, at its core, this UAP discussion is a foreign policy discussion because it's what it really does is highlight where we're pissing away money. $26 billion a year.
That's true.
That's the waste. That's just the stuff that mistakes, things they tried to develop that didn't work out. 26 billion. What would that do for education? What would that do for healthcare? What would that do for the homeless epidemic that we have in this country? I mean, 56% of our budget goes to this stuff. And now we have a space force, which means they're going to want a bigger piece of the pie. Like, this is a foreign policy discussion. This UAP topic highlights exactly why we shouldn't be spending trillions of dollars on killing people. Like, there are so many other things we could be spending money on. And it doesn't, it just doesn't have to be this way, especially when like I said in the debrief, you guys had highlighted these new B-2 bombers some of them are drones, some of them you can they're manned, but they're at a price tag of, $50 million each. Yep. And they had 50 on order. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for planes.
You'd be shocked how much money gets spent. I think that whoever put together that $26 billion in waste that's a very conservative estimate.
You could fund
I think so too, Manny.
Go ahead, Chris. I think we were just on a slight delay.
Right? I was just saying you could fund that whole ATIP budget off of one F-22 Raptor.
Right.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Right.
They're like $20 million planes. I mean, like,
Right.
Really?
That's without maintenance. So you're talking about maintenance, you're talking about parts. I mean, some of those parts, the minutia of those parts, I've talked to like jet mechanics and stuff. I mean, a screw will cost thousands of dollars. So people don't understand how much it takes to just keep one of those damn things running for like 5, 10 years, 15 years. I was just going to throw this out earlier was that I think, and again, I would testify behind closed doors to Congress, but one of the things I think people need to begin to think about is the concept that people may not be dumping money into this because they understand that there's things they're not going to figure out yet. You understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to say this as coded as I can. There may be advances that we haven't hit yet that would make essentially dumping money into specifically researching UAP not necessarily pointless, but not as fruitful. Like I would start looking at things like material science, things like how much money are groups like DARPA dumping into understanding physics. We know that they're trying to work on a quantum internet. You know, I'm just trying to point people in directions again without winding up like Gary Webb. So I'm just saying, start looking at ideas and saying that, you know, would it be fruitful to dump, you know, $30 billion or $1 billion into this thing? If you know, just by looking at them, we're not going to get there just yet. We're not going to get one. One's not crashed. We're not going to retrieve one of these. These things are essentially so far out of our league. It's essentially like, you know, a kid who just started boxing, who's 6 years old, trying to jump in the ring with Mike Tyson. You know,
Right.
There may be people trying to train up to get one of these things. Because I know from what I've seen, I would testify before Congress, there's literally no way this is a human technology. You know what I'm saying? There's things that were not released, that were not talked about, that I will tell you right now, there is no way it's human technology.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the fascinating thing, right? And this is something that Tim McMillan wrote about. And he actually had an interview with Steven Greenstreet a couple of years ago about this very thing. And he was asking him, well, you know, back in the Roswell days, let's say we had actually acquired one of these craft, and you go to one of these major generals and say, hey, look, I need money to figure out what's going on with this craft, how it got powered. This is not our tech. We don't know what it is. We want to reverse engineer it, give us money. And they're going, I got the Soviets to worry about. I've got entire assembly lines with rocket engines being built as we speak. You want me to pull money from that? And our rockets that we know how to fuel, rockets that we know how to, planes that we know how to fly, you want me to pull money from that to put into something we don't have any idea how long it's going to take to reverse engineer or even figure out if we can ever reverse engineer it.
Yeah. See, I don't even know if I'd want that. I just would want research into it. Yeah. Like, can we scientifically put this into a category? Can we study this? I don't want to
100%.
I don't want to try and figure out materials and how we can monetize the gravitational systems. Like, I think Manny's right. Like, dude, we're not getting that. You know,
we want
like
the baby steps.
Baby steps. Like, we need to know. We need to verify scientifically, 1,000,000% without a doubt, that these things are in fact not an astronomical or some sort of weather event or whatever.
We need proof beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a craft that is being piloted by either otherworldly intelligence, a non-human intelligence, or an extraordinarily advanced intelligence that is not us. We need to identify that. And if that's an absolute fact, and I know everybody in this room has their feelings, we have our ideas, we have our convictions, but none of us really know. But at the same time, I don't have the same experience other people have. Manny may have a very different experience from me. He may in his, heart of hearts, absolutely know 100% for sure, but I don't have his eyes. I don't have his brain. I don't have his experience to rely on. So I'm here reliant on all of these, all of this data, and it's a hodgepodge. And then, we have no way of putting it all together. That's why we need to study it. And that's why I love, people like Loeb, who said, you back me and I will study this thing. I will follow where all these paths are. We'll put out the most high-tech equipment possible, and we'll begin to study it outside of the military industrial complex. What do you guys think about that?
Reset.
Oh, reset. We got to reset the room. Kristen told me to reset the room. We're going to reset the room. All right. So thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an amazing panel here at the Singularity Lab. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you do so now. If you haven't clicked the bell, make sure you do so now, because we go live every single day of the week, twice a week here on the Singularity Lab on Tuesday and Thursday, 3 times a week on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We've got an amazing show coming up tomorrow on UCR. We've got the Dragon from Skinwalker Ranch joining us. The Dragon. He's going to be joining us from Skinwalker Ranch, and we're going to be reviewing episode 9 of 10. 9 of 10. On Thursday, back here at the Singularity Lab, we've got Mark Sokol, who is working on anti-gravity. He's working on a warp technosignature detection device. Talk about a mad scientist. I'm very much looking forward to that. Christopher Plain, who's here with us right now, head science writer of the Debrief, did an article on him recently. Make sure you look that up at the Debrief. We've also got on the panel right now Manny Miranda. He is an Army veteran and podcast host. He covers everything from current events and history to UAP. And we've got Victor Richie, who's one of the founders of the National UFO Night Out Skywatch event. As a USAF veteran, he has a unique perspective on several areas of the phenomenon, including the threat narrative. Thank you guys all for being here today. This is such an extraordinary opportunity to speak to you all. Jack Ryan says Luis Maurice Jimenez for 17th Congressional District of Los Angeles.
Luis Maurice Jimenez. Where did you get Maurice from? That's hilarious.
It rhymes with Luis.
No, I know. But it's just funny. It's funny. Yeah, that's hilarious. No. And
I just want to say, I want to respond to Harbinder here. Avi Loeb's a nice guy. I like listening to his ideas and thoughts, but there's no way the industrial military complex are inviting him in. And you're right. And so Chris Plain talked to another astrobiologist recently who said, hey, if NASA's willing to study these things, are you in? He said, absolutely not unless they show me the classified data, because it's pointless. If I can't get a hold on the classified data, you're not giving me all the data points. I'm not going to be able to get any solutions for you. It's worthless. But this is why Avi wants to do it outside the military industrial complex. He wants to use private money and private backing to start studying this UAP phenomenon. UFO Garage in the house.
Can I hit something on that?
Please.
Okay, what you just said is really important, and I think people need to understand exactly what you mean there about Avi Loeb, what he said, because it's very important. A lot of people who are just getting to know this are hearing that scientists are getting involved, that they want to be a part of this discussion. They're asking, like you said, for the evidence and everything. Everyone needs to remember the military uses scientists already. They've been using them for decades. They get astrophysicists, they get nuclear physicists, they get every range of science you can imagine. These people have NDAs non-disclosure agreements, NDAs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they've been doing that for a long time. The important point, which is what Avi Loeb said and what you just said, it needs to be outside of the military, outside of the intelligence community, away from the Pentagon. It needs to be in the private sector that the scientists get this information. And like he said, he does need the raw data. You have to give him that. Right.
But that's the
thing. We have that opportunity.
What's that?
I think we have that opportunity with NASA now. I think that the impression I get from them is this is a legitimate pursuit. They are answering my emails. It seems like a legitimate pursuit over there. I really do think that we're at a point in time where I don't know that we're ever going to get rid of the military in the mix, because they have the best equipment. They're gathering the best data between their satellite sensors, airplanes, ships, and everything else. They're still gathering the best data. That doesn't mean as individuals we shouldn't gather data, or things like Skyhub and Skyfort and these sort of things shouldn't move forward. But I really do feel like NASA and the lead science are going to get a real good look at this data. I really do.
Chris, what do you think? Help me understand. Oh my goodness. Your heart has, oh my goodness.
Skyhub? Is that Maurice Jimenez?
No, it's Tim McMillan in an ice cream truck jamming your internet. Somebody on
internet crap again?
Somebody, no. Well, when it was earlier, somebody had said it's a long explanation. You kind of had to be there, Christopher. But basically, Christopher Mellon or Tim McMillan's outside your house in an ice cream truck jamming internet. But yeah, somebody's already made a meme of that.
I can't believe the speed at which people are now making memes out of the show is just truly extraordinary, because it doesn't even take us like 10 minutes before we get the meme back that we really wanted. And so, Chris, just to remind you, when we were on with Steven Greenstreet the other day, that was exactly what happened. He heard an ice cream truck outside of his house, and he said, "Is that Susan Goff? He's jamming my signal," because his internet was going in and out. And then it happened to you. So obviously, it wasn't Susan Goff this time. It was Tim McMillan. So
love
you're
it.
all
I
caught
was
up.
about that. I was about to
That's
ask, was Tim McMillan an EW guy? Never mind though. I didn't know if he actually worked in electronic warfare, and I was like, oh, that'd be an interesting take on UFOs. And it's like, oh no, this is
Chris,
this is literally
does
just
he?
shitty internet.
Is
Hey, Mike,
McMillan
do
a
you mind
company
if I hit on
manager?
one other point that Manny made before you kind of reintroduce the room again?
Yeah.
Please do.
I think this is an important point when we're talking about science, either individuals or institutions or universities looking at this data. What they do in science is they figure out the problem, and then if they don't have the tools they think are necessary to evaluate the problem, they develop the tools.
Right.
I was talking earlier about the James Webb telescope. We started spotting exoplanets in the 90s, and it's taken us 35 years to really get a piece of equipment up there that can look at their atmospheres. Did we know we needed that in the 1990s? Of course we did, but the process to get here. So I think that was something Manny was touching on earlier that I think should not be missed, that to evaluate, and even Jazz hit on it right at the very beginning of the show, to evaluate something that may not be so easy to evaluate, something that may seem to have an elusive component to it. Maybe there is more sophisticated equipment than even what we have right now. And maybe part of that search will tell us where we are missing equipment. He seems to be hinting at that right now, that maybe part of that understanding is already there in the military, that they already see those gaps and are going, this is the equipment we need to make that evaluation.
I gotta say, I genuinely try to avoid the topic of UFO as much as I could. Like in the 2 years I've been doing my podcast, because I was just like, this is gonna open a can of worms, and there's gonna be a knock at my door at some point, probably after this. But again, I haven't disclosed anything classified. I'm just saying, in code, what I've seen, it seems like the most logical thing would be build up the tools around what you're seeing first. It's a scientific method. Yeah. What are you observing? What do you think is going on? Start building those tools out, and like what you were saying about exoplanets, right? Even planets near us, right? We just found biosignatures in the atmosphere of Venus.
Yes.
For the longest time, scientists wanted to know. We knew this planet used to lake ours, and then a runaway greenhouse effect destroyed it. And they wanted to know if there was something there. It took this long to get there. Now we're talking about something that basically from the ground level is a complete unknown. And the last thing I would reiterate is I just hope everyone continues to try to research why the switch went from unidentified flying objects to aerial phenomena, because that's something I would hit on in that congressional hearing 1,000 times, because that change in how they describe things, there's a reason for it, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
I have two hypotheses. The hypothesis number one is that they wanted to get rid of the stigma so that they could actually put a standard operating procedure in order so people would actually come out and talk about these things. The second one is that they don't fly, they are aerial phenomenon that move in ways that we don't understand. And rather than creating lift and using using classic Newtonian thrust and Newtonian physics, these things are using a different kind of physics that we don't understand. And I think, Manny, you're leaning towards the latter, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, what I saw, I'll tell you right now, what I saw, not only in the way it moved, but in what it was made out of, what it did. I can't imagine anybody being inside of it.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. How did you know what it was made out of?
Right?
I'm not going to say material exactly, right? What I'm saying is the way that it looked like what it was made out of. All right. It's kind of difficult to explain, but when you're watching things, you get a gist of sort of what it looks like, right? Is this thing, let's throw some examples out. Does this thing look sort of ceramic? Does this thing look sort of metallic, right? Do those sorts of objects simply split and become a mirror object? Do they dance around through the sky? These sorts of things aren't natural. Right. I can't conceive of a way that a UAV pilot would be controlling something that did something crazy, right? I can't imagine even that this would be an automated program run software, like we see drones do dances in the sky and stuff. This would be a little bit more complicated. And I would argue that some of the things that I've seen, I just highly doubt these things are human.
Right.
Something that keeps getting thrown around out there is holographic technology. They were discussing that at some point, I believe in the Cold War, they were planning on displaying no, excuse me, during the Bay of Pigs. they were talking about displaying a holographic image of Jesus Christ and to trick the Cuban people that it was a second coming of Christ and to flood their communication systems and then invade. Now, they were talking about this during the Bay of Pigs. This is the 60s, man.
Yeah.
If they had, and I don't know because I haven't read this anywhere, but I'm curious, maybe Plane has an insight on this. What kind of holographic technology do we have? Is it as sophisticated as maybe one would think? Could it really, is it good enough to fool? Oh, damn it! Okay, there he is. Is it crazy? Is it good enough to fool, say, a service member like Manny or something like that?
What? What are you talking to me?
Yeah. I was asking you about
I heard the first part about the holograms and the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah, so the holographic technology. Do you think it's gotten to a point where it could fool masses of people like that?
First of all, there's just not a lot of value in it from a military standpoint, and that's where all the money is spent. So I know it's an ongoing theme here, but the military would much rather build another plane or a rail gun that they abandon or something like that. I would be shocked if there's any hologram technology to spoof things like that that's any more advanced than stuff we had in the 70s. I'd be shocked.
Something
no one's talking about it. I don't get pitched about it from scientists. I don't read about it. I don't hear about it. It's not something that's active. If anything, the commercial market is not even the.
Yeah, we lost him. I was going to say the hologram of Tupac at Coachella is probably like the most advanced fucking hologram out there.
Yeah, well, I mean,
someone in the army is just stealing it. Someone in the military is just like, can I just get a copy of that real quick? Because we just don't care about it. We just want Tupac playing that all over.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm curious if a set of drones with that kind of camera system hooked up, flying in a drone kind of formation, if they can produce I mean, that Tupac hologram was pretty damn convincing, and that was years ago. Sure. So if you throw a couple of those on some drone, heavy set drones that aren't going to sway in the wind and can project an image like that, I could see how that can confuse the enemy. At the very worst, definitely flood some communication systems to do other nefarious things. But
can I add something to that?
Yeah, please.
The recent images of the triangle/pyramids that we saw. There's been a lot of talk online from people pushing the natural phenomenon idea, talking about atmospheric plasma. That and the idea of holograms. There's a lot of sensor tools on the USS Nimitz. Well, there's one specifically, a hyperspectral imaging sensor. It's unique to the Nimitz. But most of the other carriers also use laser and range finding tools to pinpoint targets in the real world. They work by bouncing a laser back to the sensor, which tells them exactly where an object is. You have to have something solid to bounce a laser off of. You can't do it with the hologram.
No,
and they use that with these. So
that's all I was going to add. Same thing. Is just that the reason they know those are physical objects is just because of the sensor arrays that they have. Right. Could you maybe use like holograms from drones, especially on a foggy night or something? Maybe. And again, you could fool regular people, just eye observers, but you're not going to fool people that have really, really fine-tuned sensing equipment, whether it's radar, whether it's he's talking about laser sensors that get perfect, targeting systems up. It's just you're not going to be able
like
to
those Stark drones in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, does it? I mean, you had mentioned something, Manny, about a splitting object. Now I always
a possibility of a splitting object.
What? Right? No, I just said you had mentioned something about it. I didn't say you saw it. I just threw the idea of it out there. But this.
Like, I'm joking, but really, I have to throw those.
Right? No, I get
qualifying
it.
words in there. Like seriously.
No, I totally understand. But it was just the me and Michael were talking about the idea. Like, it doesn't have to be one of these things. These 5 boxes. More than likely, it's all 5. It's all 5 of these things. It's drones. It's atmospheric conditions. It's military tech. It's maybe Chinese and Russia tech. And it is other Like, it is other. And I love the idea that you were saying of scientifically studying this with seeing what sensors don't work versus what sensors do work, and how they pick them up better. That gave me a lot of hope, because like I always just, in the back of my mind, man, I'm always like, God, do I have this way wrong? And I think it's a healthy thing to have in your brain.
I think about it every day, Luis.
Every day. Well, I mean, like we were talking about this earlier, Michael, like, because I've had an experience, right? But I try my best, my absolute best, to cut that out emotionally from the conversation.
Right.
I can tell you, even though I've seen it, I've experienced it, I can't tell you it's real. Like, I just can't go there. Even though I've heard the stories from F-16 pilots about one object coming down, splitting into three and flying right over their jets. Like, I've heard the David Fravor and the Alex Dietrich story, and it just confirms everything that I saw that night. But at the same time, I can't put that on the desk of a senator. So I have to swallow that and disassociate myself from it, because it doesn't do any good moving the conversation forward.
Do you not think that multiple eyewitness accounts and data points are part of the overall picture and shouldn't be considered as pieces of data? Obviously, we can convict somebody in a court of law with eyewitness data, right? We can, even though we do know that it is one of the least valuable forms of data, right? Eyewitness testimony is the least reliable. But we can still convict somebody based on eyewitness data as long as we have enough other corroborating data points. So I don't think it's not of value, Lou. I think it is of value, but it's not.
It's definitely a value, but it has to be done like a police investigation, because the difference between this and a murder is, after a murder is committed, police are sent out, and whoever witnessed it, their testimony is written down. It's immediately recorded, so it's as fresh as it could possibly be.
Right.
That's what this needs. It's like we need like the Ghostbusters of this. Like we need a UFO department in every city, like on some level. I mean, if you really, 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 really want to get to the bottom of this, and you really want to make sure that citizens are being heard about their experiences, there has to be a task force in every town.
Elon could put that together like right away.
I don't think he wants to, though.
I don't think he wants to. Yeah,
I don't think
he's definitely got the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like a fire department, police department, UFO department. If you see something strange in the sky, you call these guys. They come out, they record it, they double check with the airports and the military to make sure nothing was there. And if there are other reports from that night, then they go and get those reports. I mean, dude, you're talking about a lot of money and a lot of stuff that would have to happen to make that happen. But it's what's
cool would
needed.
That be to go 5 years in the future and see that.
Yeah. I mean,
that'd be great.
That'd be great. But I mean, that's what you would need. It's honestly, that's what you would need. You would need a new police force type organization that has multiple people that can respond to calls, especially if it's a flap or a wave or something like that. And it would have to be run for decades to collect information and really paint a picture.
But it only takes one, Lou, and that's I think that's the interesting thing here.
It only takes one, but science ain't about that, bruh.
Right.
Science wants more than one. Science wants repeatable data, and I agree with you. It only takes one, but if you want to paint the picture, if you're serious about this, and this is what we're talking about, then you would have to have a national organization that's way more reliable and more organized and has better equipment than MUFON.
Right.
And you would have to have trained individuals, like legitimate police officers, like, legitimate science officers, I guess, is what they would be.
Well, I mean, it might come. I was just saying, it might come in the form of a DoD program. Because I think one of the things that's going to come off of this preliminary assessment is, at least in the military, there's going to be a group of people that are basically like the UAP task force, but that's their permanent job. They'll be put at some duty station, and their job will just be to analyze this data, which is what they were hinting at pretty hard and saying that they want a standard SOP because every unit's going to have to be able to, have a soldier come up to them and say, hey, I was on mission, I saw this. And then they're going to have to go, okay, this is the whatever DA form, like Department of the Army form, whatever. This is what the Army sends up, and we have UFO reports. And then they'll send it to this group of people. The big thing then that you're going to see, which this always happens, right, is spillage. There's not spillage in the terms like national security secrets and stuff,
right,
but spillage in the sense that almost always when there's some sort of group created within the government, eventually when enough experienced individuals go through that and they realize they can make more money going into the private sector, they will start a private version of this. There are private intelligence agencies that you can hire to snoop on people and do crazy stuff within the legal limits. You will eventually see the same thing with UAP. The people who analyze UAP within the government will eventually spill out into the private sector, hopefully sooner than like 20 years and a pension, right? But it will eventually happen. Like if they're going to set up a group, it will become a civilian thing at some point. The issue is, why not now? That's my issue. Why not do it now? If there's things flying around our planes that are all different shapes, there's orbs, there's tic tacs, there's cubes and pyramids and all this stuff, why not take it more seriously? My issue is what is the kind of lax response to UFOs? Like, why is that there? I think that's a big question people need to be asking. Why is it so relaxed?
Yeah.
If it's China, that shouldn't be that relaxed. If it's Russia, you shouldn't be relaxed. If it's our U.S. tech, you should be covering it up a lot more. And if it's
doing a better job,
you're way better. If this is secret U.S. tech, this is like the worst OPSEC in human history. This is secret U.S. tech, but you're flying it into Ryan Graves' jet. You're buzzing his plane. You're almost killing him more than once. What kind of U.S. tech program is that? You know what I'm saying? And if it's some sort of like technological gods from another dimension or something, then you should definitely be trying to figure out what the fuck they are. You know what I'm saying? And if it's a nothing burger, then just don't deal with it. You know what I'm saying?
You're right, Manny.
A good theory that somebody thrown, I think it was McGowan actually, who said, if you've got a private military industrial complex type of entity and say they've got a new thing, a new toy that they think the Department of Defense would be interested in, and they're getting a cold shoulder, if they say threw that new toy into an active training session and said, see, look what we could do with our tech, you may want to take a look at it again, they're going to get a slap on the wrist, but I doubt they're going to lose any contracts or get in any real trouble. As a matter of fact, they might even get a second look at that tech that they're trying to get a contract for. I found that, kind of interesting. But again, like that doesn't answer the 60, 70 years of pilots seeing this stuff, like that's what I always go back to. Like pilots have been seeing Tic Tac since the 40s, man. Like, sorry, that's not our tech. It's definitely not Russian. Definitely not Antarctican. They're
Chinese.
Way not. They didn't get the Antarctica. Definitely didn't get there. Like it's a silly. It's starting to become a silly conversation. But I think the silliness of it is so apparent now that I hope that the government and sort of the entities within it are going, okay, this isn't going to fly anymore. Like, I think Vic's right. Like, if they wanted to nip this in the bud, they could have done it with that preliminary report easily. If this was Condon or if this was Blue Book and they wanted to end this conversation because it was embarrassing, especially, say, the Air Force. We didn't hear any part of the Air Force in this preliminary report. And I also found kind of weird that we didn't hear anything about nuclear relations between these objects and our nuclear capabilities.
That could have been classified, though, Lou.
Yeah.
Maybe, but it seems to, when you got Marco Rubio talking about it, like these things have been seen over our nuclear facilities, that could have been in the report without releasing any details. The fact that they just skipped it, like we've heard that nuclear connection for 4 years now. Elizondo said it. Mellon said it. It's not a secret.
Yeah, even
it's
before
not,
that, too.
Even before that. But but specifically within the last 4 years, that is the biggest selling point as to why this report was even made, is because these things have been seen over our nuclear fleets, over our nuclear bases, over our nuclear facilities, where it's, power sensitive areas where if just one bomb would knock out the entire East Coast, that's just fact, so I don't know why it was never put in the report. But again, it's a preliminary report. We got to be patient and let's see what happens here in the next 90 days.
Let me clarify one thing really quick about that.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not going to release anything classified, but it's pretty common knowledge that these nuclear launch sites are closed systems. These are not connected to Wi-Fi. These are created long before the internet. The systems that they use to communicate are extremely secure, and these are not something that you can get into remotely. The fact that people are reporting as far back as the 60s that these nuclear launch sites were somehow accessed remotely and turned off. I mean, to clarify this for you, you would essentially have to cut into the wiring and put a physical implant to get on this device. And these things are doing it remotely. At a time when China was essentially about to go under a revolution, there's no way it was them. Russia was barely anything. You know, they were a threat only in name. And it definitely wasn't just the U.S. going, hey, what if I just built something and then turned off this nuclear launch site? You know what I'm saying? Like, the problem with the preliminary assessment is it doesn't take any of the historical reporting into account.
Right.
And you could easily say, oh, it's because we have better data now, we have better sensors now. But you have people that had some of the highest clearances guarding these nuclear launch sites saying in public, oh, yeah, this thing flew overhead and this shit just turned off.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. There is no way you did that unless this thing flew in and they had some like alien Navy SEAL, like jump down, dig underground, cut the wire, put a plant in, turn it off, and then turn it back on and fly away and go, anyways, got your ass. And why would they do that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It seems like whatever these things are sending a message of peace. You know, I know that turning off the nuclear launch sites seems like a threat, but if you could turn it off remotely using whatever technology that's so advanced, it seems like magic based on Arthur C. Clarke, you could also launch them. So why wouldn't they just launch them if they're a threat?
Right.
No, it's true. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You're good. Is that
Manny wants you to subscribe.
I want you to subscribe, damn it. Launch the nuke, subscribe.
Yeah.
Every click on like launches a nuke.
Dude, this nuclear discussion is very interesting. Like, I think it's probably one of the most important aspects of this entire thing. And I was kind of bummed I didn't see it in the report, but again, baby steps, you know, got to be patient, set your expectations. I mean, I didn't think I was going to get any nuclear connections, so it didn't disappoint me too much, but in post-thought, I was like, man, wonder why they didn't talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it just seems like they just didn't want to. They could easily not. And that would scare people. That in that report would scare people. And they didn't want to scare people.
I think if there was even a hint that they were messing with our nukes, I think people would freak.
Yeah, just imagine saying like, oh, there's this weirdo who wants a nuke.
Cross and step out was like, nope, not that word.
Nope. No nuke. No nuke.
Yeah.
We don't talk about nuke.
They also crossed out probing. They were like, this one's funny, but don't put it in there. We know it's funny. Don't put probing.
No
in
nuclear
there,
Right.
probe.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well,
They are in rods.
I real quick, yes or no question. Do you think the
Hey,
U.S.
Luke, could you turn it down just a touch? Can you get it down just a
Yeah,
touch?
well, it's
Turn
like
that shit up,
almost.
boy. Don't listen to him. Turn it up.
Okay, there we go. That's better. There we go. Okay, no, you're right. Real quick, yes or no, because I know we got to go. But do you think it is possible that the United States military has cracked this tech?
I'd say to a degree.
Okay, so I'll take
no
that as a
comment.
yes.
I'm gonna take no comment on that one.
No comment.
No comment.
I like
on Miranda.
living. I'll take no comment.
Wow, I feel like that's common enough.
No, that's a no
Kristen?
comment. Legally, I have said no comment
Fair,
at all.
fair. But I can take it to however I want it, though, right?
Oh yeah, interpret it however you want.
I'm
That was
kidding.
a
I'm
comment on
just busting your
reptilians.
chops.
Everyone relax.
Yeah, there you go. Kristen, what do you think?
Of course, anything's possible. It's not.
Yeah, Mike.
Wait, what's the question?
Do you think the U.S. military's cracked this type of technology?
I
where
do
they can,
not.
Where they have
I-
objects that can move in these types of ways that have been described.
Yeah, so this is something that I think about a lot. I wanted to ask Chris more about this, Chris Plain, when he was here, and he's going to have to come back and do a full interview because he has some ideas. I don't know. Is he saying yes, yes, yes?
Yeah.
I don't know. The Tic Tac, man, I don't think so.
I after watching Greer's documentary, one of the parts I did like about it was, again, when he whipped out these paper mache models of all of these different craft and what could be man-made versus not. I really enjoyed that part of the conversation. I think that our military has figured something out. There's no doubt in my mind. They have. I don't put it past human ingenuity and know-how and just sheer endless budget to not have figured something like this out on some level. I honestly.
Well, and isn't there something in your mind that's saying, I hope they've done something with the damn money?
I mean, right? You know, I'm just wondering if this is sort of like their introduction to introduce this kind of tech into the world, you know? Like, hey, it's us and it's them. Like, you know, I don't know, man. It's I think our
Anti-gravity.
That's a good private.
Well, I'm not calling it
question, too,
anti-gravity.
We go to
you know?
Lockheed and stuff, and for all of our planes, I mean, it would be a private entity that works for the government, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, when Jeremy was on our show, Jeremy, forgetting his last name for some reason right now, alien scientist. When he was on the show and he was talking about how, you know, we shoot lasers now in front of our planes to cook the air in front of it to create a pocket so we could slip through it at a much faster speed. Come on, man. Like,
I know,
and then you
dude,
talk
but
to
like-
John Greenwald, the king of FOIA. Okay, almost 5 million documents ripped out from the government's hands. At least that's the way I like to think of it. Just rips it out of their hand.
And he's still alive, Manny.
And he's still alive. But what he said shocked me when he told me that our military is 50 years ahead of us. 50
Right.
in tech. 50 years. Now, Michael, when's the singularity supposed to come?
Kurzweil says 2035-ish, 2040.
I'm not very good at math, but that puts them a little bit ahead of the singularity. You're talking supercomputers. You're talking anti-gravity, maybe. You're talking about zero-point energy. You're talking about nuclear fusion, maybe. I mean, there's all sorts of toys and fun things that, especially in the DOE, as we've learned, could be playing with.
I agree that the government is 50 years ahead in certain technologies, right? But I don't think they're 50 years ahead in quantum computing. I don't think they're 50 years ahead in, you know, in anti-gravity technology. I just don't, and energy production.
Hoverboards? What about hoverboards?
I don't know, man. I don't know. This idea that we could have had these objects from in the 1940s and 50s, like Chris is. No, I don't think saying yes. I don't understand.
I don't think we had them in the 40s and 50s. I don't think that at all. I think though.
Oh, you think we may have reverse engineered them?
No, not even so much reverse engineered. Can you imagine if they had 30 years of a department had 30 years of inside track and inside footage and inside data, and for the last 40 years they've been trying to figure out how you could possibly get to something like that. You're telling me if I give you a 40-year window for the U.S. military with an endless budget to figure out this thing that definitely exists, you don't think they can maybe come close to cracking that?
I don't know. I think it's budget allocation. And like I said,
well, we've learned. I mean, our homeboys, he showed us very simple ways for them to hide budgets and money like that. Especially
it is true. It is possible.
A Department of Energy that answers to no one. No one.
If they dropped even one piece of technology for even one of the 5 observables, it would transform the world. I'm not entirely sure if it would be good right away, but
right. And why were they working? Why were they working on the Blackbird if they had this? Why?
Yes.
What's the point?
Because I think an admission of this, it's a paradigm shift, man. People will demand it, and I don't think they have. I don't know if they have ways. I don't know if they have ways to apply it commercially yet. You know, it's just like our space tech, right? The reason why we beat the Russians to everything in space is because we had, number one, we couldn't look bad, but all of the things that came out of the innovations of the space race, like fiber optics, you know, all the internet, Wi-Fi, all sorts of weird shit came from the space station we use today. You know, how to develop new microchips. All sorts of weird stuff.
You look at the atom bomb and what we developed because of our understandings of quantum mechanics, and you know, it's just extraordinary.
Look what Christopher Plain's saying.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate for both of you for 1 second, real quick. So for the side that we don't have that much technology, remember that we were developing the internet long before any commercial use. Yeah. And don't forget that the Iran-Contra scandal, most people don't realize this, was mostly unveiled because of private messages that were sent across this early internet between Oliver North and this other guy that was involved with it. So we could be ahead in tech. Now, with the flip side to that, the playing devil's advocate for the other side, when have we ever made a technological leap and not immediately weaponized it? Before we ever had a nuclear reactor on Earth, we had nuclear bombs.
Sure.
So all I'm saying is, if we could take something and teleport it, we'd probably teleport right through Xi Jinping's house. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
I'm playing both sides. But I'm playing both sides. Just
I agree with you, but the working model we have is the SR-71 Blackbird. The drawings for that plane go all the way back to the 40s.
Yeah.
So it took them a long time, and that plane wasn't introduced till 1987 publicly. So it took them a long time to weaponize it. They had to perfect it first. They had to go through many variations of it.
Very true.
So that's all I'm saying is maybe they cracked it now, but we won't see it till 2050.
Yeah.
I'm just playing both sides. I'm just having fun. I'm not saying
it's a good side to play.
Still no comment.
Here's something to think about with what you just said.
Yeah.
Space Command, which is what Space Force came from. Space Command was established within 2 years of that shuttle, or of the SR-71.
There you go.
I'm just furious. I'm just furious. Chris Plain is all here like, listen to Luis, and we can't even like talk to him so he can like defend Luis on this. This is bullshit.
Well,
He has become a Twitter trash talker now.
Make sure. I want to make sure because we got to get Chris Plain up to 1,000 followers on Twitter. So make sure you guys go to Twitter, follow @plane_fiction. The dude's the man. He's hilarious, and he's got an amazing article and writing skills over at the Debrief. So make sure you follow him there, and then also make sure you follow everybody who's on this panel. Manny Miranda is an Army veteran and podcast host. He uncovers everything from current events and history to UAP. Manny, how can people find you?
Right now, you can find me on Twitter @Fringe Center, and also you can find my podcast, the Fringe Center podcast on YouTube, anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever.
Fantastic. And we've also want to say thank you to Victor Richie. He is one of the founders of National UFO Night Out Skywatch event. As a USAF veteran, he has a unique perspective on several areas of the phenomenon. Victor, where can people find you?
Right now, I'm totally engaged with the Skywatch, so look up Nuno, National UFO Night Out. You're going to find me on pretty much every platform at this point, even Instagram.
Fantastic. If you're not familiar with Kristen Mataluni, make sure you follow her on Twitter @KMataluni, and Lou @LouAngelis. And make sure, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed right here, right now, click the subscribe button, hit the bell, make sure you know whenever we go live. We go live 5 nights a week. 2 nights here on the Singularity Lab, 3 over at the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Yeah.
What else? You got anything else, Lou?
Make sure you like, share, subscribe, check out our links, support the show. Again, we're a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you. So if you like the content 5 days a week, don't be shy. Try and support it in any way you can. Even if that means just liking, sharing, and subscribing. Honestly, that helps a ton.
Helps a ton. And we've got the Patreon links below. If you want to support us on a monthly basis, please do.
Indeed.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm ready for tomorrow. The Dragon.
The Dragon. I don't know this song, but I like it.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight at the Singularity Lab. Make sure you hit us back tomorrow with the Dragon. And then Thursday, we've got an amazing show for you, Mark Sokol. If you're interested in this anti-gravity conversation, if you're interested in this mad scientists who are working on these incredible things, make sure you hit us up right here on Thursday.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you all later.
Take us out, Lou.
Everybody wants to